morning and welcome back to Planner Craft. I'm Natalie and today I'm going to be doing a little bit of a project with some heat embossing, and also you'll notice that I have a jelly on my desk. So while I'm just waiting for everybody to join, as soon as I start saying hellos I'll start going through what I'm doing. So I'm working with distress inks today rather than distress oxides, and that is important and intentional. So if you're going to be doing this particular project, you need to be using distress inks or dye inks. And we're working in pastels, so this week I'm in a really pastel mood. So you'll notice at the weekend I did a pastel palette review, and then tomorrow I'm going to be doing a bit more work in that kind of colour scheme. So good morning, Thea. So I have spun sugar, Kitsch Flamingo, salvage patina and squeezed lemonade to work with today. Hi Tracy. I've also pulled out from my stash this Stamps by Chloe design, which is the Chandler birthday one if you have it. Now what I will say is, for the design I had in mind, it's a little bit on the small side. So if you have some bigger flowers, go with those instead. Hi Rachel! Long time no see. And whoever it just said hello all, if you want your name to appear so I know who's talking, you can go to chat.restream.io/FB, and I'm sure Deb will put that up when she joins in. I've also got some die cuts off to one side that we may or may not use. See how we go. To go with my gel plate, I've also got brayer and some sponges. So you've got either option really. You can either use a brayer or you can use your sponges. I thought I'd pull them both out. I have some smooth stamping cards. So this one is the Super Smooth from Paper Mill Direct. So I have one piece that I'm actually going to be stamping onto, and a, not necessarily a scrap piece, but a piece where I'm going to be cleaning off onto. So hopefully we can get some interesting textures going on there too. So you'll notice I'm not working with a big gel plate, I'm just going for one of the little ones. So I'm going to try and build a kind of blanket effect or quilted effect, but we'll see how it goes. So morning Deb. Deb, could you just pop up the chat link so that we can have names appearing? It's a bit easier if it's there in text rather than me saying it. Okay, so I'm going to take the protective cover off my gel plate, and I've mounted it onto a stamp block. That's to make it easier for me to actually stamp it. So just give it a good shake upside down, make sure it's not going to come off. Now occasionally what you'll find is when you're working with ink, sometimes it'll stick to your card when you apply it, but that's okay, you can just peel it back off and then reattach it to your mount. So I'm going to work from my lightest colour through to my darkest colour. So I'm going to start off with my lemonade. So as I was saying earlier, I'm starting with ink, but you could use dye ink for this, but I wouldn't recommend using the oxides just because I want to be able to do some colouring later as an option. I'm going to start off with this one. Let's see how we go. So, not too bad. So with this one I'm going to go a little bit darker. And let's bring a bit of that darker pink through the middle. So what I'm doing is applying the lighter colour top and bottom, Then when I'm applying this one, I'm just angling the pad slightly. But with ink, it doesn't matter too much if you get any sort of crossover. Another reason for using ink rather than oxide. Morning all with a kiss. I have no idea who you are. I can guess. I don't want to guess and get it wrong. Okay. So again, I'm going to tap this out, and this time I'm using my pink sponge. And this tapping action is just going to help blend those colours together. So hence you can use a brayer if you want to and do it that way. Brayers are really good for getting like an ombre effect. So if you've got two totally different colours, top and bottom, then you can use your brayer to blend those together. Now because I've stamped off the edge, I'm just going to blot that onto my paper there. You'll also see that there's a little bit on my messy mat, so hence I'm working on a messy surface. So I'm just going to clean that up. Now usually what I do is save that and then brush it back over the top, but for today I'm just going to go like so. So I'm going to just quickly stamp that again, because now I'm going to go to my patina. I'm just going to go on the bottom edge. So get my green sponge and I'm just going to tap that top edge. Turn that round. Stamp it down. And you can see it's trying to lift off the stamp block there. So just give it another little press. Now, don't worry if you don't get these lined up precisely, because we can actually go and stitch back through with a gel pen. I thought it was, but I didn't like to say for certain. So hi Mum. So again, because we went off the edge, I'm just going to quickly do a little bit of a clean up. So this time, I'm going to go squeeze lemonade to the top. And I'm going to go Kitsch Flamingo to the bottom. And I'm going to put a bit of spun sugar just in the middle. So I'm just tapping the edge of the pad rather than using the whole pad. And this time, let's get my brayer in. So I'm just going to give my brayer a little bit of a wiggle, not too much, just so that it kind of blends those colours together. Now, the yellow's here, so I want that yellow to go up there, and the pink's down here, and I want that to go in there. And again, because we went off the edge, I'm just going to bring that onto our card and just doubly make sure that there's nothing still on there. So when we're doing an ombre effect, you tend to find that there's not as much ink remaining after you've done your imprint. So just clean that up off the mat. So for this one here, I'm going to go back to my green. So Salvage Patina is a really interesting colour to work with, because sometimes it's green, sometimes it's blue, depending on the other colours that you put it with. And again, do a little stamp. And turn my piece around. So I'm going to do pink into pink on this next one. So we've got our Kitsch Flamingo here. So if I start off with spun sugar to the bottom, and Kitsch Flamingo across that middle section, I'm just going to give my bread a quick clean on my spare bit of paper. I'm just going to go back across nice and lightly across the jelly plate. Again, you'll find that when you use shaped jelly plates and you brayer, you get some really interesting effects on the paper that you scrub away. There we go. And a couple little pieces just for these corners. So I'm going to go for a little more of the selvage pattern for this bottom edge. Tap that off. Like so. And then let's go for the pink for this last corner, I think. So I'm just going to give my gel plate a quick clean because there's still a little bit of ink left on there. So I'm going to go kitchen lingo. And we need to cover a little bit more this time. A bit more of the corner showing. And again, I'm just going to tap that on edge. And there we go. So again, just to clean off my gel plate, what I'm going to do is just stamp that down. Now for this next bit of the technique, you are going to need a stamp platform so that we can actually line and position our stamp, because we're going to be stamping it twice and we want it to be as close to, if not exactly, over the top. So I'm just going to move my sponges out the way. And I'll move my little scrub off piece for later. Okay. Oh no, is Facebook playing up? Sorry to hear that, Tracy. And hi Linda. So if you're joining mate, all we've done so far is just create a nice quilted background using a shaped gel plate. So as we want to line up our card, you're going to want to put it into one corner. And ideally remember which one you've put it into. So I'm going into this top corner here. Now to get at my stamp. Now, as I said before, what I would normally do, or what I would like to do for this design, is to actually have a stamp that's a little bit bigger. But we'll go with this one and we'll work with it. So I'm going to head up this end, so it's going to be up towards kind of top third. So if you think about your golden rule with your thirds, you want it to kind of sit on that top third line, which would go roughly about there. I'm going to press and close that up. Now, in terms of ink for what you want to stamp with, at this stage, you literally just want it dark enough that you can see it, but not so dark that it's going to overpower any embossing powder that you put on top of it. So I'm going to use, and I know I've got it here somewhere, tied it up the other day, that was a bad idea. There we go. I'm going to use smoky grey. Now what I really want, ideally, is to just be able to see those flowers. So we can see that one there, but these two haven't quite come out. So I'm just going to give them another little linking. And the reason being, we're going to actually get the ScanNCut to cut them out. Not fuzzy cut, but at least to have circles that go around. So there we go. We have our stamp design. So it's really important with this particular card that you use a stamp where you haven't got to keep moving it, replacing it and stamping it again, because otherwise you're never going to get the alignment. Okay, so I'm going to leave my stamp in there for a moment. Put my ink pads up. And it's time to grab our cutting mat. So let's get the ScanNCut on. So as we're going to be scanning, I'm going to pop my card in 1 inch from the edge. So that means that if you have got any details, or if your stamp design is very close to your edges, you can still work without worrying about hitting that active area. Okay. Let's go. Okay. And I'll switch to the close view so you can see what I'm doing. So first of all, we want to load the mat, which is always an interesting concept at the moment. First time, there you go. That's what a little bit of TLC does for you. Okay, so I now want to use circles. So I'm going to bring in 1 circle, and I'm not going to be worried about the size. It's literally going to be on the mat so that you can do a background scan. Make sure that your card is adhered down well to your mat. And let it feed through and back again. Okay, so the reason I'm doing it in this order, in terms of doing the double stamping, is that we don't want to be cutting heat embossing in your machine, because you can both chip your actual work, which is upsetting, but also you could actually damage your blade or lose bits in your machine, which neither of those things do we want to happen. So that's one of the benefits of using a stamp platform. And thank you, Tracy, for saying it's pretty. Sorry I didn't say that sooner. Okay, so I'm going to go to Edit, Object Edit, Resize, and we can take this right down. Now, if you're working with something pale like I am, make sure that your scan is on the darkest it can go. So if it's looking a bit faint, just make sure that you're on the darkest scan. going to go OK. I'm just going to nudge that up slightly. And if we zoom in and zoom in again, I'm just checking size so that when we actually duplicate it, we don't have to worry too much about the size. So if your flowers are all different sizes, you can just skip that little step. I'm just going to pull this across because we also want to put a circle around this one and a circle around this one. So I'm going to go OK. I'm going to duplicate that shape. Okay. Resize the new shape. So I'm going to take that down a bit because we know our next flower is not quite so big. Pull that over the top, a little bit smaller just to get that clearance from that other circle. So you don't want your circles to be crossing over, that's really important, they shouldn't cross. They can just about touch but don't cross. I'm going to go OK, OK, I'm going to zoom in so that I can see what's going on. It can go a little bit smaller. So remember, when we're resizing, it's going to do it from the centre rather than from any of the corners, so you will need to just give that little nudge back again. I'm going to zoom in again, scroll down, then use the moving keys at the top to just nudge. Okay. So now I need another one of those to go for the other flower. So again, duplicate, 1, 2, OK. Drag it across roughly, then we can zoom in and check. Scroll down. And then we can nudge. Go OK. So we're going to cut this design before we do anything else. So I'm just going to use my standard water blade. OK. And go OK again. OK again. Go to cut. I'm going to change my settings because that's for my vinyl blade. I'm going to take it down a couple of notches for this one. So since the update, I found around -7 works better than -9. I'm going to go OK and start. So don't be afraid to ask questions. Helps me fill in the chat. Is anybody else having issues on Facebook? So which does everybody prefer then? Facebook, YouTube or Twitch? Twitch is good for long videos. And by long, I mean longer than they are. Oh, no. Okay, so it slipped slightly. So it's done those two okay. So we'll take those out. But this last one, it hasn't done quite right. So don't panic, first of all. We'll make a feature of it instead. So when we get round to the heat embossing, then we can do that bit next. So I'm going to stick this back on my mat. New mats are on their way. And this time I'm going to grab my pen holder and a Quickie Glue Pen. So the choice of pen holder is up to you. And I'm just going to check that on my little bit of scrub off paper so that I can make sure that it's working. I'm going to pop that into my pen holder. Let me go back overhead so you can see how I do that. Okay, so I'm just gently pushing that into my holder, making sure it stays down into the guide. Okay, you may need to give your guide a little bit of a clean after putting it in there. And let's put that into our machine. Give it a little wiggle. If it doesn't click first time, never force it. I'm going to go back. Now I still want this scanned, but I don't want those circles anymore. I'm going to go to add first, retrieve data from the cloud, and I have some text. So if we go to edit, we can use our arrow keys to cycle between items that overlap. So this is a really useful feature. So we're going to delete those circles. So we are making, if I zoom back in, a nice heat embossed card using our ScanNCut. Yeah, Facebook Watch on the TV, sometimes some people have been struggling, so I was chatting to a lady yesterday who's been struggling with watching on there. So I'm going to select all, because I want to keep those together. I'm going to go to Object Edit, I'm going to group them, and then I can drag them together and not worry about having to do them individually. I can also resize them together. So I'm going to take those right down and take this into that bottom corner. Okay, so this is probably a bit tiny for you to see now. Yep, there's about a 30-second time delay between when I'm saying things and when you're hearing them. So if there's a question that pops up, usually it takes me about 30 seconds, and that's presuming I see it straight away. So I'm going to go OK. OK. Now because we're using a Quickie Glue Pen, it's really important to remember that although we're drawing, we're actually going to use our foil setting. So anything that is slow drying, like a paint pen or a glue pen, or if you're finding that your pens are smudging, then the foil setting is a good one to go for. It's going to ask how full your pen is. Now, to be honest, when you're working with the DX in particular, then I don't find that that setting makes a huge amount of difference to the pens that I'm using. For starters, with some of my pens, I have no idea how full they are because they're opaque on the side. So I'm just going to leave that as it is and go OK. We can then set the pressure in here. So if you're finding that your pens are splattering a bit, make sure your pressure goes right down, and that's just going to take that little bit of pressure off that nib. With something like the Quickie Glue Pen, you might want to pop it up a little bit, particularly when it's towards the end. So it's really down to your individual pen. And the way to tell is when you're actually drawing with it in your hand, you have to press harder to get more ink out. Or you have to go slower. Can you go a bit quicker with it? And so on and so forth. So given that mine's at -9, I'm happy for that to just go. Now because I'm using the 3D thumbprints holder, it's going to say attach appropriate holder. go OK and start again. If it comes up with this one, then what that means is you've done some scanning and it just wants you to move that scanner lever so that you're not smudging your glass. Go OK again. You can still go start and it will get there. So if you have an emboss pen, you could be using an emboss pen at this point. But again, I would use the foil setting for that too, because that's not the sort of pen that you would want going anywhere near your scan glass. You could be using your rubber foiling kit. Okay, at this point, before you remove it, make sure that you can see that it's drawn. If you're not happy, send it round again, because I can't see that. So I'm going to just check it in the guide if you... Okay. It's in the guide correctly, it's grating on the bottom. So let's try it again. Go OK, please select foil, OK. I'm going to pop my pressure up a little bit. And go start and start again. So Jill, you can also join the group, which is ScanNCut and Paper Craft Courses, Classes and Workshops by Planner Craft. It's a bit of a mouthful. But in the group we do lots of challenges. So the current challenge at the moment is to do a decorated box, which is closing at the end of the month. So you've got just about a week to do your design, week and a half. That's a bit better. We've got bits of it, but not all of it. And we really need all of it. So I'm going to go OK. Once more. Put the pressure up a little bit more. Hi Sandra. So you may have noticed this week we're also streaming from the Planner Craft page itself as well. So I ended up reverting back to classic Facebook for my page because the new way was just driving it all. I couldn't share anything to it. I couldn't share the blog pieces. So we're going to the main page and to the group. That's better. So if I go back overhead, so I can show you what you're looking for. Okay, I'm going to take that off my mat. So if I tilt that to the light, you can just see where our glue pen is. So because I've used a glue pen rather than an embossing pen, there isn't a big rush to get the powder onto it. So that's something to bear in mind when you're choosing your pens. How much time do you have between unloading it from your mat and actually getting your powder on it? So I'm just going to do this back up for a minute. I'm going to bring in my messy tray and let's go for... Ooh. Decisions, because originally I was going to go white, but I think I'm going to go black. Oh, actually, that's cinnamon. Let's see how this one goes. Just going to shake this. So if your embossing powder's been sitting around for a bit, just give it a little shake and it'll help break up any lumps and clumps in your powder. I'm going to pop that into my messy tray. Go over the top of the powder. Give it a little tap. So usually with a tap most of it will come off. If not, just grab yourself a little bit of a... I find a chisel brush is quite good for this. And I'm just working away from my design. And like so. And you can just sweep away the excess. I'm going to do the same down here, so away from my design. And it's much easier to remove it at this point than after you've heated it. So I'm just using the very tip, just get in those awkward places. Okay. So as I said, because we use that glue pen, there's no rush. Just take your time. I'm just going to empty this out my messy tray, give it a little tap, and I can use a brush on the rest. So. So all the projects that we do are in real time, so there's no, here's one I made early. Gives you plenty of time for asking questions if you're having issues with your ScanNCut, with the software, or if you have questions about the project itself. So like why I haven't embossed the rest of my image yet. Oh. Thought that was our car then. We'll just quickly give her a check. Yeah, she looks alright. Okay, so with me messy mat now clean, let's bring in my piece, and I'm going to need my heat gun. Now let the heat gun heat up. I'm doing one underneath, one over the top. And that should help keep your card nice and flat. There we go, that's done. Now as my embossing powder has a little bit metallic in it, you want to go really careful to not actually go too far, otherwise you'll find that you get a bit of a greasy outline around your lettering. So there's my where you are planted. Next we need to get this back into our stamp platform so that we can actually get those designs re-stamped. So I'm going to go up into that top edge. I'm going to use my magnets again to just hold that in place. Now for the fun bit. So because these bits here are now loose, I'm just going to slot those back in like so. So this time, rather than using our grey die pad, we want to use an embossing ink. So you can get those either with a tint or with clear. So if you're going to be doing some clear embossing or white embossing, you're going to probably want to use something that is clear as an ink. Or you can go coloured with a pigment ink pad to actually colour your clear embossing. This one I'm using is a tinted emboss pad, so this has like a pale pink to it. Now just check your alignment before you go down. There we go. Give it a good press. Now the reason, there we go. Again, you want to be checking that you can see a good level of ink on there. So if you're not happy, do it again. So you notice I'm inking up really heavily with this pad just because I want to make sure that I get enough ink coverage, because there's nothing worse than getting like a half embossed image. So check the alignment again and give a good press down. Okay. So just because that lifted out, let's pop that there. So hopefully, fingers crossed and all that, we can then work into our messy tray, and we should have enough ink coverage. I'm going to leave my stamp attached to my platform in case there wasn't enough, because we can always clean it off before heating up and then go back with a glue pad. So don't think, oh, it's not worked, that's it, I'm going to have to start again from scratch. So let's tap that off there. And again, I'm going to go for my brush and just brush off any that's stuck to my background. So once you try heat embossing, or someone does it in front of you, it's like magic. So it's like a lot of people got into crafting because of heat embossing. It's just watching the powder turn and melt. Fascinating. Okay, so just going to give that a little flick. Okay, there's one piece done. If you do get any on your fingers, I'm just going to shake it off. Okay, so you want to go really careful with your little circle pieces, because a lot of these will have embossing almost right to the edge. Something else to bear in mind when you're choosing your stamp. How much room have you got? So if you're working onto a heat-proof mat at this point, you can pop it on there and do it all on to your actual surface, so a glass mat's handy. Just going to get my little pokey tool so I can get this one out a little bit easier. Okay. So I'm just giving it a little tap on the back. That'll get rid of most of it. And then it's just a case of just getting out those little tiny bits. And you can take your time, whereas I'm a little bit more on a deadline. Okay, so before you start off with your heat gun, always put your powder back in your pot, because even though you don't think you're going to be blowing it away, trust me, it blows further than you think. So get those back in there. And just take your time, get nice and clean. You can also get some glitter cloths and just clean this out after, which helps to get rid of the dregs. And I'll do that quite often, because there's nothing worse than doing some nice white embossing and finding that one flake of blue or black or even the silvers. Especially if you're using it for a resist technique. Okay. So that's not too bad, so I can probably put my stamp platform. I'm going to try the tray back away for a second, and I'm going to bring my other bits back in. Right, first of all I'm going to do the big piece, because that's going to be the nice easy bit to do. Again, let your gun come up to temperature. That one done. Now for the next bit, it's going to be interesting. Let's get some tweezers. Actually, that might do. This is going to be an inventive use for a quilling tool. Just because these are so small, I don't want my fingers getting incinerated. So I'm just going to feed that between the prongs of my quilling tool very carefully. May not be perfect, but we'll see how we go. this one's going to be a little bit more fiddly because it's little.
So what I would say next is, if you are going to do some colouring like I'm going to, just make sure that all the unmelted powder is definitely gone, and check your surface as well. So you just want to make sure that we don't end up getting this onto any of our markers. So regardless of which markers you're using, just try and give it a good clean, check your work surface is clean. So I had a little present recently, didn't I, Mum? So I thought it's about time I got them out. So I'm going to go for a light hot pink. Horizon green looks kind of promising for a match. And lemon chiffon. Oh, and my lights died. And I'm going to colour onto my flowers first of all. So with this one, because the circle didn't work out quite as planned, I'll go with it and do something else with that. So I'm just going to pop a little bit more colour on there. So if you start to find that you're picking up a bit of colour, back to our scrub off sheet again, I'm going to give it a little bit of a clean. So next let's go for the mint green on this one. So it's horizon green is the colour if you have the markers. I'm just going to go and pop that in there. So what I'm looking for is colours that are going to contrast with that background and help it to kind of pop. So I'm going to be popping these up slightly anyway. Again, let's get that a little clean. And for our big one in the middle, I'm going to use two colours. So I'm going to go for the lemon towards the inside. And take those outwards. So if you start to find it's picking up too much of that blue, just give it a little bit of a squiggle. And go back over the top and it'll start to lift some of that blue back out, so it goes a bit more lemon rather than blue. And it's just because it's picking up from your actual embossing powder, so if you use white, then you won't have this issue as much. And let's go to our pink. And you'll probably find that this pick's up a little bit of that blue too. ScanNCut's given up on me. There we go. So one of the things you can do with this card, if you want to, when we do our 3D pop-up, is you can actually cut out some larger circles. So if you've seen me do that technique before, you can use that for this card too. So now I'm going to bring my messy mat back in. And my pink sponge.
Now I'm not going to go instantly to my darkest pink because when we're using a sponge you're going to get a stronger colour anyway. So I'm going to go to my sponge sugar and I'm just going to go round the inside here. So it's going to look like it's more popped up than it's actually going to be. Like so. And a little bit more just the bottom edge of this one. And grab my little lemon sponge and the squeezed lemonade. And get back in up here. So you can see how much stronger using our sponges actually makes it compared to the jelly print. I'm going to do the same over this side here too. Try not to get too much onto my tail section just here. Because we can still pick up what's still on our sponge, because this one's really strong colour. So I'll just use what's left of my sponge already, just to blend that in. Okay. So, let's go for, if I can find the right pack. I'm just going to go straight to a C6, I think. Let's move that up a little bit, over there. I'm going to fold my card. See how that's fitting. Spot on. So sometimes I'll go a bit bigger so that I have white border around the outside, but I think with this one just as well to just go straight up to that edge. I'm going to use a little bit of double-sided tape just to make it hold and stick a little bit faster while the glue's drying. So you don't need too much. So I'm just going to do top and bottom. Otherwise you could find that you accidentally have things moving around when you don't want them to. Come on. Easy lift tape, never easy lift. And I'm going to use some of my Tombow Mono just to stick the rest of it. So this one's quite a good glue for if you're doing larger areas, especially if you need something that has a kind of all over stick, so anything that's warped. So if you're working with watercolour card, for instance, I just want to make it conform to the flatness of the card that you're putting it on to. And it has a nice broad tip with little teeth that's going to keep your glue nice and even across your surface, which is the other reason why I like that one. So, let's get that stick on, get the right side of the card. So most cards when folded have a leading edge, so make sure that's at the front. There we go. There we go. So I have some little bit of foam tape here. I'm just going to use to pop these up slightly. It's not a very thick one, so it's not your ultra thick tape, it's quite a thin one. You could also use things like 3D glue dots. I'm just going to pop that onto there and onto there. Now, just because I'm doing a bit of alignment, I'm going to grab a little bit of glue and just do a few little dots, and that's just going to give me a bit of wiggle room. Also means that over time, as our foam tape dries out, it should still have a good amount of stick to it. And let's put a little emboss panel like so. So now you can see why we did that extra inking. It's going to help lift that out, that background. And this one like so. Now if you wanted to go around the edges of these little raised circles, you could do, but I don't think you need to. And finally, to make our sentiment make sense, I'm hoping I can find in here a little balloon. There we go. So again, because it's a sentiment, I use my little detail glue. So the glue I'm using is Stick to 3D PVA in a detail bottle. I'm going to line up that right hand edge, and like so. And we have bloom where you were planted. So there's a different look at how we can use heat embossing with our ScanNCut. So first of all, never put melted powder into your ScanNCut. You want to cut it out first, then emboss it. And if you want the ScanNCut to draw it, use a glue pen or embossing pen to actually do your heat embossing. So any questions before I go today? Let's just zoom that in slightly so you can see that a little bit bigger. Showing the light died, but hey ho. Hopefully you didn't notice too much of a difference. I don't know if the chat has stopped working because I'm not getting any more messages. So if there are any questions, I will answer them after the stream, or you can message me or plan a craft and I will get back to you. Take care for now and bye.